The social ritual that's most significant to the healing process is rarely the funeral. It's most often the post-funes gathering. In this case, it was at Skrellman's home, instead of, as is sometimes done, in the church basement or at a public hall. A sheet of plastic had been laid over Mrs. Skrellman's puzzle on the kitchen table to prevent it from being messed up. Plates and cups displaced the pieces within the first hour of the post-funes gathering. Mrs. Skrellman's sisters were in charge of food. They had opted for 2 6-foot Subway sandwiches. You can easily have those cut up and put in a tasteful hard plastic container. They'd instead went with the full 6-foot-long versions that signified time to party down. Those 2 long subs took up all the counter space. My dad had brought 2 industrial-sized pots of soup, the same tomato red recipe he always made except one with tofu and one with turkey. It had not occurred to him to make a vegetable soup that called for no potentially offensive proteins. As each guest entered, he said, "Would you like some soup? I've got my famous turkey here. There's also a vegetarian option that I can heat up for you in the microwave." Since only one industrial-sized pot could fit on the stovetop at a time, he kept the tofu soup at his feet and didn't move the whole time for fear that the pot would get kicked over. When he had to use the bathroom, he asked if I would stand over the pot, which I reluctantly did. Skrellman's brother, T.J. Skrellman, was coming down after a 4-day ecstasy, ketamine, and GHB binge, and was highly emotional. He was certainly the only one weeping, howling more like. This created a palpable tension. TJ's mother kept suggesting, "TJ, maybe you should go upstairs and wash up, you'll feel better." He insisted he needed to be around people. He hugged many strangers. The WAS decided to wait until TJ's serotonin levels had rebounded before making whatever efforts he could to console him. Chloe played "For the Sake of the Song" on Mrs. Skrellman's keyboard in the packed living room, singing in an emotive little voice. "Why does he sing his sad songs for me? I'm not the one." Everyone stopped talking to listen to her, but her singing either made them too sad for Skrellman or too inappropriately reverential of Chloe. So some guy broke us all out of the trance with an innocuous question about the Ontario Hockey League. But the Wraith of Skrellman didn't miss a note as he sat dubiously beside her on the keyboard-fronting blue vinyl bench seat. He was free to imagine that Chloe had a major crush on the dearly departed Skrellman and was just now sharing that crush with the world. Even as a wraith, Skrellman hoped that people saw him as a dynamo, a force of nature. Several men watched hockey in the basement. Ernest Skrellman was also in the basement, but his treadmill did not face the screen. I noticed that the treadmill read kilometers, 99.99, minutes, 999.99. Every hour, one of Mrs. Skrellman's sisters refilled his Gatorade bottle with water and placed a fresh, unwrapped AminoPal in the TrackFast's drink holder. Mr. Skrellman's ankle socks were pink with blood from the bursting of his blisters. You'd think this would have made the hockey-watching men leave the basement, but at all social functions they watched hockey in basements. They didn't know what to do with themselves at the best of times. In a tragedy like this, they could only hope not to weep for their own dead loved ones or pass gas conspicuously. They were unnerved by the bleeding Ernest Skrellman, who had not yet acknowledged them in any way, not even those who'd tried to pat the treadmill's handlebar in the most minimal shows of support. The basement was still preferable to standing in the kitchen with that weeping green-haired kid in extremely baggy pants and my dad taking up half the standing room with his giant pot. So the men compensated for their discomfort by greeting each person to come down the stairs with an almost parodic degree of heartiness. They couldn't bear to see another unanswered attempt at consolation extended to Ernest Skrellman. Once the couch and easy chair were full beyond capacity, these men, averaging about 210 pounds apiece and a median age of 45, sat cross-legged on the floor like school children. Despite all this discomfort, they did not leave early. These men were, in fact, the last to leave. With each case of beer consumed, they came to understand that their suffering socially in that basement was the only service they could offer the Skrellmans, who, at the core of their repressed and non-communicative souls, the men were aching for.